1, 2, 3.
Let's get TI5 underway. The first game here on the main stage.
Defending champions defeated in the first stage of the elimination matches.
It's a complete turn of the offense. It is over. They have absolutely been crushed. Sacred College deeply have eliminated the fan favorites of this tournament. AG are your TI5 champions.
Hello everyone and welcome to theScore eSports' post-TI5 wrap-up show. My name is Matt Demers and with me are three of our Dota experts from theScore's newsroom. I'm here with Dennis Gonzalez, Connor Dunn, Annabelle Fisher. We are here to break down possibly one of the best tournaments of this year. And let's start with that final game. I mean, Evil Geniuses knocked down the losers bracket by CDEC. This is their major rematch. They come and clutch it 3-1. I just wanted to ask, what did you think, Dennis, were the hero of that last series?
I think the hero of that last series was obviously the gyrocopter. It was something that CDEC ran a lot on aggressive, and it was something that EG recognized and denied every single game. Fear was on that hero for 4 of the 4 games, and he just killed it.
Obviously, like, gyrocopter is something that it's almost like a neutral pick this tournament. We're seeing it a lot from just every single team. What do you think something that's strong about that hero that kind of worms its way into every single game? Not every single game, but like most games, let's put it that way.
Well, the common trait for a carry is that it scales better in the late game as poor in the early game, but that's not the case for gyrocopter. He has an early game spike with his rocket barrage, and he has a crazy fast farming mechanic with his flat cannon.
But what about Samil's Storm Spirit? I mean, that guy plays an amazing Storm Spirit.
Okay.
Back in DAC, we saw this young player, just his first Premier tournament on Evil Geniuses. They win, what, $1.6 million in that grand finals?
A lot of money. Let's
A
put it
lot
that
of
way.
money.
A lot of money.
Actually, not as much as they just won now.
Obviously.
But but the difference we saw in his Storm Spirit, especially in that game 1. Game 4, he started to be a bit more aggressive, like back in his previous games in DAC. But that game 1, you could see that he's really matured as a player. Instead of just jumping in, as most Storms do, all they have on their mind is aggression. You could see a bit more cautious plays that and more focused on saving his team, like that highlight where he managed to save Universe and actually pick up a double kill as well. So I think Storm Spirit was definitely Samil's shining moment.
We saw CDEC beat EG earlier in the tournament, send them to the lower bracket. What's different about the EG that just beat them and the EG that lost before?
Well, I think it all comes down to PPD and studying those games, because they got destroyed in the upper bracket finals. They got 2-0'd. They GG'd after 20 minutes. It was not looking good. And honestly, I was thinking CDEC was going to win TI easily with a 3-0 victory. But PPD proved me wrong with studying those games afterwards and making sure not only preparing a proper draft with what you said about gyrocopter, but also understanding their movements throughout the game. CDEC always smokes up. They always roam into the jungle. They always go top lane for a gank, and Evil Geniuses was always prepared for that. They were always moving around and avoiding those ganks, and I think that was the key factor, and they proved it.
Annabelle, what's something that you found like awesome about that final game?
I was super impressed by the support play on EG, and especially when EG knew that CDEC were in.
That's the thing.
I keep catching myself.
CDEC.
When CDEC were doing Roshan, and EG perfectly timed the Ice Blast from PPD's Ancient Apparition and the Echo Slam. I believe that was Universe's Earthshaker.
Yes.
And it just, there wasn't anything they could do. 4 heroes just melted in seconds. They couldn't get their BKBs off. It was simultaneous.
That was something that we just threw our hands up in here in the office, because like mine was a little bit blown, let's put it that way. Kind of moving on from EG, we have to talk a little bit about CDEC. And I know it's maybe not good form to kind of talk about the loser and just being like, okay, what did they do wrong? But we saw just such a meteoric rise from this team. Annabelle, I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you think kind of changed? Like, were they just unable to adapt, or like what happened in that grand final, do you think, anyway?
You know, I think they played almost as well as EG, and it really just came down to, I mean, it was really close, you know? I don't think they made a mistake, per se. They just were outplayed and outdrafted by PPD. And
a couple days ago, when I was watching CDEC go undefeated through the winners bracket, I was thinking to myself, wow, these guys are mechanically strong, aggressive. his rotations out before he's even level 6. He's a safe lane carry. He should be farming. No, he shouldn't be. He's teleporting in with his gyrocopter and getting a double kill somewhere else on the map.
I think we saw that during the group stages because I remember it was a pre-6 Storm Spirit teleporting down to be part of a rotation, and you're sitting there and you're like, Storm Spirit's major kit comes online at level 6, but here's a guy that needs to be part of that, getting more kills, that kind of stuff. And I guess you were continuing.
And the thing I noticed was in that final match that EG had figured them out, and as soon as I started to watch EG figure them out, I realized CDEC only actually have one strategy. They're kind of like, they just have that one aggressive early game push, and if that fails, what do they have?
I mean, that's just an interesting contrast between the teams, though, is because we've been talking about that, Evil Geniuses, they lost to CDEC, got sent to the losers bracket, but they were able to come back and actually adapt and say, okay, this is a really aggressive team. They like, 5-manning around, and we need to be able to logically take a step back when we see these, threatening circumstances, avoid the fights, take the fights that, are good for us. But it's almost interesting that CDEC weren't able to make the same transition with the techies and be like, okay, we've taken some time, we've looked at the other games that you've played this tournament, and we come up with a logical counter or a logical strategy that works against the techies. So is that just the difference between teams that one was able to adapt and one wasn't? Dennis?
I don't know if it was even a case of where trying to counter the techies pick was even something that they even considered. I think they had such a short time frame to try to come up with a counter that it wasn't even feasible. I think it was too much of a risk to even let the techies go unbanned through the first phase, just because during the grand finals, if they happen to let it through in one game, that's pretty much an automatic win for EG, just because they can't deal with it. But I think they made an adjustment in game 2 when they were running the Broodmother mid. It's not the first time that we've seen it for this event, but it's something that definitely threw EG off their game, and I think arguably it won them that game. And I'm surprised that they didn't run something similar.
I was actually really surprised by that game 2 that CDEC actually won, because Aggressive took Queen of Pain to the off lane. Their normal off laner, XZ, took the Brood mid, and then their usual mid laner, Shiki, took the Leshrac, I think it was, in the safe lane carry position. And for me, Sumail wasn't having that much of a tough time mid lane. He was actually farming a lot more because he was power shotting all the spiderlings. So I was expecting EG to actually take that game. I was really surprised that CDEC took it.
So we're kind of seeing a little bit of versatility from CDEC, but it kind of just didn't click. I know that they kind of went into that Slark pick in the third game that we thought was going to be a huge deal. I remember a lot of us being like, "There's no way they're going to stop that Slark." But
and I think the thing is, EG had a day to prepare, whereas CDEC had to adapt through the match, and that's not enough time. That's not enough time to study and react to what your opponents are doing. So props to PPD.
Obviously, Heroes making a big splash at this tournament, but it's something I wanted to ask, I guess, each of you is who is a player that really left their mark for you guys in the tournament? Annabelle, I wanted to start with you. Who's your kind of tournament MVP?
Well, I came into this tournament already sort of cheering for Vici Gaming, and I was really disappointed in the group stages because they just sucked. And
it just sucks.
It was really depressing. Yeah, I thought, well, I have to find a different team to cheer for in the main event, I guess. But then they came into the main event fighting and didn't lose for 8 games straight. And I think a big part of that is FY.
Yes.
FY's support play has been phenomenal on the main stage. And I know the Rubik is what everyone talks about,
yes,
and that is obviously amazing, but he also did really well with other heroes. Disruptor and Sand King come to mind. And I think I was looking at his kill participation, and honestly, I know Aoi won that last game against CDEC, but he had 1 assist at one point. Right. FY has had 50% or more kill participation in every game, even the games they lost where it was 3 out of 7 or something like that.
I think that's a really important factor when it comes to captaining a team. Not only do you have to worry about your own mechanics, stacking camps and stuff as a support player, but you also have to know what's going on for the rest of your team. And FY was able to do that perfectly.
Yeah. Connor, I wanted to kind of move on to you. Who do you think was your kind of MVP for the tournament?
Again, I think PPD. He may not have shown. Actually, that Ice Blast was amazing.
That was it. That was just it. That one Ice Blast that makes it for the tournament.
Apart from his performance in game, it's the mental game. It's the mind games that he's able to outthink his opponents. He's able to draft up strategies and adapt to overcome a really tough opponent in CDEC. They defeated eHome with some amazing, I think it was Techie's Ember play, and then they went up to CDEC, and you're thinking, EG, they're really strong, they have a chance, and they got demolished.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of an EG fan, and I was really down after that game, and I was thinking, how are they going to come back? And they managed to do it, and it was not just a draft thing. It was not just, yes, they did pick up the gyro, but it was not just that. It was understanding CDEC's movements. It was studying, maybe even studying their ward placements. Who knows, But understanding how they move throughout the map, and that's such a small, micro little detail. But he was able to pick that out and use it to inform his team, hey, they're probably going to be doing this. Let's stay out of this region. Let's split push down here or something.
Yeah. I want to say half of their smoke ganks weren't successful at all. They didn't find anything.
Even that Roshan. They took an uncontested Roshan while CDEC were sitting in the jungle saying, where are they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Dennis, I wanted to just quickly get your thoughts on who was your kind of standout player for the tournament?
If you look at my compendium, it's Fear, but Fear will always have a place in my heart, but my MVP for this tournament was Universe.
So romantic, so romantic. Wish-washing at the last minute. He stole your heart on the dance floor.
He did. I could cap it off with just a $6 million Echo Slam,
yes.
But he's had so many great games on Tusk, on Darkseer, one of his most hated heroes to play on, but at the same time, one of his best heroes.
Yes, of course, that's the divine irony right there.
Exactly, yeah, and he's the initiator for EG. If he wasn't there, half the fights for EG wouldn't have even occurred. He's the one who's always putting his life on the line, his clockwork. He's always diving in, hitting those hook shots. That one hook shot where he hit...
it predicted the pounce.
It predicted the pounce.
Yes.
It didn't end up in the kill, but holy crap, did we yell out loud when he hit that. Yeah.
So let's put it that way. He stole your heart.
Yeah.
He stole your heart
He
with
stole
the hook
my
shot.
heart.
Stole your heart with the hook shot. Moving on, something that we're looking at, obviously we're looking at players, but obviously heroes are a big part of this game. So what was a hero? I guess, Connor, we'll start with you. What was a hero that stood out for you as kind of like a hero of the tournament that kind of emerged? Because I know we saw a very common pool of heroes come out in the months kind of leading up to this. A great part of Dota is that patches are not very frequent, so we do have a time to see like a very stagnant pool of heroes, I guess. But everyone says TI has its own meta.
Yep. And that's exactly what I want to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah. The TI meta came into full effect. I was completely blown away by all these Ember Spirits being picked up in the group stage.
You seem disgusted. You're just like, all these Ember Spirits.
I mean, I've had some pretty horrible experiences against Ember Spirit in my pubs, but yeah, our last major event was ESL 1 in Frankfurt, and there were I don't think there were any.
There were minimal Ember Spirits.
E1, I don't remember,
okay,
honestly.
so I'm pretty, the first game we see all these Ember Spirit picks, and all these pros have already developed. Yeah, this is the hero that we're going to use now. And you see players like Maybe, who's rocking it mid. You got Aggressive, who's taking in the safe lane. It's such a versatile hero. And the thing I really want to stress about this hero is he is probably the best hero in the super late game. Once his physical damage output is insane. Once he gets that rapier, the battle fury, the cleaving, the crits, and he can do all this without ever committing to a fight with the sleight of the fist. So with current heroes like Phantom Lancer being very popular, all those illusions create more times for the sleight of fist to proc and cleave on more things. And I think he's a really popular hero specifically because the meta right now is, yes, team fights, but also, as S4 said in an interview, wave clearing. Wave clearing is a great way of delaying the games, getting to that 80-minute mark where Ember can finally farm up his rapier. And like we saw, a lot of first pick Linas, whether Lina was in mid or support, Lina and Tusk are amazing at clearing the wave, delaying it, and letting your Ember Spirit get to that precious 80-minute mark.
Something that we saw, it kind of goes against that a little bit, but it is a very strong team fight hero. Annabelle, I know you were talking about Visage, and we saw a lot of Visage kind of in the last, I'll say the last quarter of the tournament. It's like, I think the first picks were with eHome when they were playing one of their series, but it just really became like almost won a series, we'd see at least one Visage. Did you want to talk a little bit about why that that hero did so well?
Yeah, it was actually Virtus Pro that picked it first against Secret. And I know,
you're right, you're totally right.
Yeah, obviously no one expected Virtus Pro to eliminate Secret, but they busted out this Visage and then Visage Drow strat that just wrecked their towers. I mean, obviously they patched out the birds getting the precision aura all the time. The familiars.
You have to activate them, yes, or you have to activate the aura.
You have to activate the aura to get that bonus. But the familiars do tons of damage already on their own, and Drow giving the rest of her team the precision aura is pretty good if you can keep her alive.
Something I was seeing was just like the chain stuns were really big this tournament, and the soul assumptions. Soul assumptions were just doing so much damage. I think a lot of the supports have kind of like shifted to very squishy ones. So soul assumption was just like it was picking people off essentially as they were leaving the fight.
It seems to me that a lot of these support players probably had a Visage in their back pocket and are really good at dropping the familiars on people and getting those stuns, as you say. And that's something that teams held on to for a really long time and brought out towards the end of the tournament, and it was really effective.
Dennis, I remember you talking to me a lot. I guess I wouldn't say an offbeat kind of support pick, but a support pick that kind of just like transcends the traditional role as bounty hunter. We saw a lot of bounty hunter in this tournament. I was wondering if you could just kind of like walk me through why he did so well.
It's that track gold.
The track gold.
Like,
it's all about the track gold, all about the money.
This meta is all about team fighting and getting pickoffs, and bounty just increases the value of every single kill.
Comeback potential too. Like we just saw a lot of teams that they pick bounty and they'd have a really rough early game and just like 3 or 4 track kills and they'd be just back into it.
Exactly. And even in the early game, like his level 7 with maxing Shuriken, which is usually the build that you want to go through.
Get the bounces.
If you get the bounces, it does a massive amount of damage. There was one team fight in particular, I forget which game it was, but I think someone used an ultimate on 3 people, but the bounty hunter got a track on 2 other people and used a shuriken, and it actually did more damage. It's ridiculous.
Perfect. That's what you want from a support.
Something that we're noticing is that teams are now not walking their couriers out for the bounty to snipe it. And you think like, okay, well that was like a kind of like a pocket strategy that all bounties would rely on. But you don't even need to, because like you said, the track hold it's insane.
Something that I wanted to talk about is just surprises of the tournament. We saw I think a lot of us just came in here with a lot of preconceptions, and it's almost like the tournament was really good, but it also turned a lot of the stuff that we were talking about right on its head. And something that I wanted to start off with was Secret. We cannot ignore Secret. Connor, what went wrong here? I know you feel really strongly about Secret's exit. It's heartbreaking, I know, but can you talk to us about it? Please.
I'll try.
I'll try to just choke back the tears.
I'm a huge Secret fan, and I was really disappointed. I like things to make sense. And
it doesn't make sense.
When Team Secret win the last 4 major lands and then they get knocked out against Virtus Pro, that just doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
So,
not smart at all.
Talking about that upset, I have to kind of point the blame on S4 for that 3rd game. His Queen of Pain, he honestly choked, and his item progression did not make sense. Like you were talking about with the Visage, the bird stuns, there was actually one moment where Zai, amazing Darkseer play, by the way, props to Zai. He vacuums 3. S4 doesn't have a BKB. He jumps right into the vacuum. Instead of going a bit further back, because Sonic Wave has a huge range.
Huge range.
You need to work on your positioning, S4. Like, don't jump in. That bird stunned him. The second bird stunned him. There's a soul assumption in there, and then the Echo Slam finished him off, and he didn't get a single spell off. And that could have been a turning point, and I'm really crushed by S4 rushing a Scythe of the Vice instead of a Blink Dagger, Blacking Bar, or even an Ags early on to help you farm that Blacking Bar, lowering your Sonic Wave cooldown.
Yes.
So
that was something that we saw, is that he had that Scythe of Vice, but he'd die and then buy back, and then he'd die again and then buy back, and all of a sudden, his economy's wrecked. He isn't able to, be a functional carry because he's just so far in the hole of trying to like stay alive.
The Virtus Pro lineup had too many disables to ignore, and he played way too greedy. You need the spell immunity.
Anyways, kind of just wrapping things up a little bit, I wanted to ask, there's a lot of kind of immediate reaction, I guess. Was this tournament better than TI3? Like, TI3 seems to be the high benchmark.
Better than TI3.
Better, like saying that this was, there's some comparisons. Maybe not if it's better, there's at least a comparison to say, was this as good as TI3? Obviously, I think a lot of people were disappointed by TI4, maybe a little scared that it would happen again this time. Kind of like on your scale of TIs, where do you think that this kind of hits? Annabelle, I'll have to start with you.
Well, I didn't watch TI3 as a Dota professional.
So,
I mean, I remember being really hype about it and really enjoying it. I definitely bandwagoned Alliance.
Yes, okay.
So it was
We can't be friends anymore, I'm really sorry.
I'm so sorry. But it was really fun watching their win in the grand final. but
think-
this has been just as enjoyable.
Yes.
And through the entire event has been just as enjoyable.
I was going to say a
so-
lot of people just kind of see this as, okay, that was like the hypest of the hype finals, and Alliance did have like a storied run through the winners bracket there, but it seems like this entire tournament has been good Dota.
Yeah,
And that's what I
exactly.
wanted
Oh,
to
for
talk
sure.
about. Rat Dota, Alliance versus Navi, not the most exciting for me to watch, and I really like the current meta where we're at now, prioritizing team fights, prioritizing aggressive plays with the nerf to the comeback mechanic. You can pull off those insane plays, you can go for those risks and not get punished as hard. And yeah, when I think of TI3, obviously I think of S-Force Puck, and when he stopped the TP with
Yes.
the
Dream Coil.
Dream Coil. Yeah, and then when I think of this one, I think of the Ice Blast into Universe's Echo Slam. And both of those plays were amazing. So it's hard to compare when it comes down to the highlights, but when it comes down to enjoying good Dota, I think this one takes the cake.
Dennis, what do you think?
It's actually interesting. I actually thought that not that the grand finals were for anything like mild or anything like that, but the games in the group stage were insane. How many rapiers were bought?
Too
during
many,
the group
too
stage?
many. Let's put it that
Close
way.
to 10.
Yes.
Yeah.
Too many heart problems for people like us, where actually need to like pay attention to the games and analyze them. It's just like, okay, there's just an unseen element, and we're just gonna like ride this out. Let's put it that way. The roller coaster never stops.
But the main event, like hands down, it's probably the best.
Awesome. So I don't know about you guys. I'm really tired. It has been a nuts couple months just leading up to the international, and the last 2 weeks have just been a hectic storm of awesome Dota. But despite me really wanting to go pass out right now, I'm actually really excited. We've got majors in a couple months. We've got 3 more tournaments like this, hopefully like this, before we hit up another international. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I really enjoyed talking about TI with you guys. Annabelle, Connor, Dennis, you guys can follow them on Twitter. My name is Matt Demers. You can follow theScore Esports on Twitter at twitter.com/theScoreEsports. And you can also check out our app. If you're interested in following along Dota and other esports, the majors, looking at TI, live stats, interviews, features, you can check us out on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day.